Imagine a moment so charged with tension that even the most seasoned Hollywood insiders held their breath. Leonardo DiCaprio, the man whose name is synonymous with blockbuster triumphs and award-winning brilliance, has finally admitted something nobody saw coming. He truly despised his co-star on what would become one of the most iconic films of our era. You've watched the red carpets, you've memorized the box office records. But now, for the first time, we're peeling back the velvet curtain to reveal a feud so raw, so unexpected, it redefines everything you thought you knew about Leo's early rise. It all began on the lavish set of that legendary drama. An atmosphere dripping with cinematic magic, but also simmering with unspoken frustration. Cameras rolled under a golden Los Angeles sun, and every frame seemed destined for posterity. Yet behind the scenes, whispers circulated. Leonardo, at the height of his youthful ambition, found himself at odds with a co-star celebrated for her gravitas. She was rumored to bring a seriousness that clashed head-on with Leo's improvisational flair. He thrived on spontaneity. She demanded precision. At first, the tension was subtle. A furrowed brow here, a clipped line delivery there. But soon, the barriers came down, and what started as creative friction escalated into open hostility. Picture a costuming fitting, bolts of fabric strewn across a glossy table. Leo, ever the chameleon, suggested a tweak in jacket length to capture a freer silhouette. She, meticulous and methodical, insisted on historical accuracy first. A barrage of off-camera arguments ensued. Voices raised louder than any character's monologue. Crew members exchanged nervous glances as the star duo squared off in the halls of the sprawling studio. Underneath the glamour, tension crackled like a live wire. But why did this clash resonate so strongly? Because in many ways, it represented a collision of eras. Leo, the upstart rebel operating on raw talent and instinct, against an established actor with decades of Hun technique. One side saw the art of film as an organic river, ever changing. The other revered it as a finely tuned instrument, demanding respect for every note. Their divide was not just a personal spat, but a philosophical battle over the soul of cinema itself. And then came the pivotal scene, the one that would seal their animosity forever. It was a late November night, shoot beneath harsh spotlights, filming that fateful confrontation sequence where their characters clash. On paper, it was a subdued, introspective moment. In reality, raw emotions got the better of them. DiCaprio, so invested in capturing genuine spontaneity, broke character to deliver an unscripted line. She, insulted by the deviation, responded with a stinging retort. The assistant director froze mid-cue. The boom operator stilled the mic, and the rest of the crew witnessed a live, action riff that felt more like a duel than a take. The aftershock lasted days. Leo retreated to a corner of the set, headphones on, isolating himself to recharge his creative batteries. She, ever the perfectionist, refused joint rehearsals, preferring to record her dialogue alone. Producers scrambled to mediate, but the wedge deepened. On one side of the lot, you had fans celebrating Leo's rebellious spirit. On the other, followers applauding her dedication to craft. Social media lurched with cryptic leaks. Anonymous insiders hinted at behind-the-scenes breakdowns. Tabloid headlines danced with speculation, fueling public intrigue. Yet, for all the fervor, neither star would publicly acknowledge the rift, until now. In a rare interview, DiCaprio confessed that their friction left him shaken. "I respected her skill," he admitted, voice low and earnest, "but I couldn't work under that kind of rigidity. It felt like art was being suffocated." He paused, letting the weight of that confession settle. "If she ever contacted me again, I don't think I'd answer." Those words, brimming with candor, revealed a side of Leo we seldom see: vulnerable, unfiltered, and very human. Contrast that with the image we know so well. The suave leading man at premieres, delivering poised acceptance speeches. Here, he was stripped of Hollywood veneer, exposing raw frustration with a collaborator he'd once admired. It shattered the fairy tale of smooth sailing film sets and reminded us that even legends grapple with creative conflict and personal boundaries. But what drove that contempt so deep? Was it purely artistic difference, or did something else fester beneath the surface? Rumors swirled about off-set tensions, allegations of late arrivals, disagreements over script rewrites, and even a whispered accusation that she once took credit for an improvised scene Leo had originated. Whether any of it was true, the consequence was the same: two artists at an impasse, bruising egos and reputations. Yet in the crucible of conflict, sometimes unexpected breakthroughs emerge. After weeks of stalemate, both stars faced a choice: cling to resentment or find a way forward. According to on-set diaries, it was a chance remark by the director. Something about the transformative power of forgiveness that cracked the ice. They agreed to one last rehearsal, outside the glare of cameras, to air their grievances. Eyewitnesses say the emotion was palpable: tears, hesitant apologies, and finally, a handshake that felt more like a peace treaty. That moment, raw and unguarded, remains off camera, an unseen resolution that allowed filming to resume and preserved the integrity of the production. But it didn't erase the memory of a feud that, until this confession, lived only in rumor. It also illustrates a truth rarely acknowledged: that even great art can be born from friction, that the most electrifying performances might spring from genuine human discord. Today, as Leo revisits those memories, he frames them not as a mistake, but as a catalyst. Tension can be a force for creativity, he reflects. When you push against someone, you discover new edges in your own work. His revelation offers a rare peek behind the curtain of Hollywood's glitziest illusions, reminding us that perfection often requires grappling with imperfection first. So, who was she, the co-star he once hated, and did reconciliation ever follow? Stay tuned, because in our next segment, we'll unveil her identity, delve into her own perspective on that fateful production, and uncover how their uneasy partnership shaped not just one film, but the trajectories of two storied careers. Claire Danes, the actress who would have seemed an unlikely candidate for a bitter feud. At only 16, she was already celebrated for her raw emotional depth and fearless intensity. While viewers saw Romeo and Juliet's tragic romance, few knew the off-screen dynamic was cross-cut with tension. Even now, Leo's confession still reverberates among fans, who assumed their chemistry reflected pure artistic synchronicity. The truth is, that chemistry was forged in fire, raw argument, and moments when two fiercely independent talents collided head-on. Claire had already garnered acclaim on television, winning a Golden Globe for her work in a groundbreaking family drama. She carried herself with a seriousness beyond her years, approaching each scene like a masterclass in method acting. Scripts went through endless drafts under her watchful eye, with precise notes scribbled in margins. To her, every line mattered, every gesture conveyed subtext. When Leo arrived on her set, fresh from a series of television spots and early supporting roles, she respected his youthful energy, but bristled at moments of improvisation. She saw spontaneity as a potential threat to the carefully constructed emotional arcs she worked so hard to reveal. Their first on-camera scene was a simple balcony exchange, Romeo pleading for Juliet's love. The director called action, and Leo opened with a loose, almost jokey aside that caught everyone off guard. Claire's eyes narrowed, but she held her ground, delivering a flawlessly enunciated response. After the cut, whispers rippled through the crew. Some applauded Leo's audacity. Others whispered that Danes had been robbed of her moment. The next day, they rehearsed again. This time, Leo stuck to the script, but an undercurrent of resentment remained. It was a subtle dance of power, trust, and the unspoken fear that one might outshine the other. This tension erupted during an early morning shoot that would become legend among insiders. It was just before dawn when they filmed the iconic garden scene, ivy curling on stone walls, dew sparkling under soft lights. Extras hushed themselves at a distance, watching the core duo. Claire arrived first, clipboard in hand, meticulously counting her steps. Leo sauntered in moments later, booming a greeting that echoed through the courtyard. She offered a curt nod. He countered with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. They ran the scene twice before Leo tried a different tone, dropping his voice to a whisper. As his improvised lines wound through the dialogue, Claire suddenly stopped mid-take, turned, and spat out, "We're here to honor Shakespeare, not your improv comedy." The crew froze. In that frozen moment, the gulf between them seemed unbridgeable. The director called cut, but neither actor moved. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances as furious whispers filled the air. A production assistant gingerly approached Claire, asking if she was okay. She nodded stiffly but refused to speak, retreating into her trailer with a plastic bottle of water. Leo lingered on set, arms crossed, jaw clenched. He replayed the exchange in his mind, regretting the sudden flare of ego that derailed the entire take. Producers stealthily arranged an off-camera meeting, hoping to diffuse the standoff. They brokered a neutral space, a small, dimly lit room away from bright lights and rolling cameras, where the stars could walk in as equals and speak honestly. The next morning, Leo arrived first, coffee in hand, determination set in his posture. Claire entered minutes later, arms folded, tattoos peeking beneath sleeves guarded. The producer gave a quiet introduction, then stepped aside. Silence stretched over the room like a thick fog. Leo cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology," he began, voice steady. "I let my impulsiveness get in the way of our work." Claire listened, arms loosening fractionally. When her turn came, she acknowledged the same. "I should have been more open to your style. We were both protecting our own visions, and I forgot the bigger story we were telling." That exchange broke the spell. They spent 2 hours airing frustrations, hashing out creative ideas, and forging a mutual respect that felt almost sacred. By the time cameras rolled again on that pivotal confrontation, something had shifted. The energy crackled not with hostility, but with electric synergy. Their lines, once clipped and cautious, now raced off each other with fresh intensity. In multiple takes, their voices carried new layers of vulnerability and honesty. What had been a battlefield transformed into a vibrant laboratory of performance. Viewers watching the final cut would sense an intangible chemistry, far deeper than any superficial gloss. It was the alchemy of two artists who had clashed, reconciled, and harnessed their conflict into pure cinematic gold. Their partnership became the feature of cinema history. The premiere buzz was electric, but beneath the glittering lights and red carpet flashbulbs lay the echo of that on-set feud. When Romeo + Juliet debuted, critics couldn't stop praising its frenzied visuals and daring performances. Yet savvy reviewers sniffed a curious undercurrent. The leads delivered scenes that oscillated between palpable intimacy and barely concealed tension. Box office numbers soared, over 100 million worldwide in the first month. But for those who knew the backstory, every lingering glance between Leo and Claire felt charged with unspoken history. Publicity tours demanded joint interviews and paparazzi moments. and the actors complied with professional smiles that masked an unresolved chapter of their shared past. During the global press circuit, the pair were seated side by side on countless stages. Hosts peppered them with questions about their chemistry, often asking how they achieved such effortless connection. Leo and Claire answered in lockstep, praising each other's talents, while artfully diverting from any mention of friction. A promotional clip even showed them exchanging banter and laughter, yet insiders whispered that laughter rang hollow. When cameras cut, each star retreated to different wings of the studio, as if two orbits momentarily aligned for the sake of art, before drifting apart again into separate trajectories. Meanwhile, fans dissected every frame online, some convinced they saw expressions of annoyance amid the passion. Forums lit up with conspiracy theories. Did you catch Leo's eye roll after Claire delivered that line? One post asked, prompting thousands of comments. Another speculated that studio execs had pressured them to publicly reconcile, harnessing their feud as a marketing engine. Even years later, supercut videos of shaved down tantrums and rehearsals leaked in grainy clips, fueling the mythos of a feud that never fully went away. Despite the subtext, the film's legacy grew. Academy voters nominated both leads, Claire for Best Actress and Leo for a breakthrough nod, marking a triumphant outcome that neither star predicted amid their early clashes. At the awards ceremony, they posed for photographs that seemed to blur the memory of those tense days. Cheek, arms entwined, a united front. Yet backstage, Claire was said to have called Leo's performance exuberant but risky, while he privately told confidants that her precision forced him to dig deeper into his craft. In this way, their feud became an engine for artistic growth, driving each to heights they might not have reached as solo performers. In subsequent interviews, Leo began referencing that creative friction as a turning point. Claire pushed me, he said in one show appearance. Art in that push, I found new corners of my own expression. Claire, too, acknowledged that Leo's spontaneity cracked open her method, teaching her to trust in the moment. Their feud was thus recast as a crucible, a test that refashioned them both. Though few details were offered, these admissions stitched a narrative of mutual respect emerging from mutual antagonism, one that resonated with fans who reveled in tales of rivalry turned collaboration. Time marched on. Claire moved on to acclaimed roles in independent films and Emmy-winning series, refining her craft in quieter projects. Leo catapulted into blockbuster epics and award-season juggernauts. They rarely crossed paths professionally after Romeo + Juliet, save for a cameo in a charity table read that industry insiders called awkward but amicable. Neither spoke publicly about the original feud for over 2 decades, allowing the story to settle into Hollywood lore, an intriguing footnote in 2 remarkable careers. Fast forward to a modern interview. Leo, now a seasoned icon with an Oscar at his door, sits down with a veteran journalist for an intimate profile. When asked about that early tension, he leans forward, eyes reflecting the weight of memory. I was young and stubborn, he admits. She was focused and disciplined. We pushed each other to extremes. It wasn't easy, but the film wouldn't be what it is without that push and pull. His tone is neither bitter nor defensive, just reflective, a man who's carried the memory long enough to see it as part of his own evolution. Claire's side of the story surfaced shortly after. In the foreword of her memoir, she writes of that tumultuous shoot. Leo was fire. I was the anchor. We clashed, we burned, then we found a glow we could both survive in. She describes how their arguments taught her to channel frustration into characters, to let emotional undercurrents breathe beneath the words. in a chapter titled "The Spark." She credits Leo with showing her that vulnerability sometimes demands unpredictability. Public reaction was swift. Social feeds erupted with nostalgia, fans revisiting classic scenes through the lens of newfound insight. Stream counts for Romeo × Juliet spiked, with viewers hunting for clues to the raw tension that once simmered behind the camera. Film schools added case studies about creative conflict and collaboration, using Leo and Claire's story as a primer on how friction can forge unforgettable art. Ultimately, the revelation of this feud, and the journey from hostility to respect, resonates because it mirrors a universal truth: that creativity often thrives in conflict, and that real growth can demand discomfort. By revealing his hatred, Leonardo DiCaprio invites us to reconsider our own boundaries, to ask what collaborations might thrive if we dared to push and be pushed in return. And he reminds us that even Hollywood's shiniest stars grapple with the very same struggles we face whenever we strive to create something genuine. From the moment Leonardo DiCaprio first spoke those candid words about Claire Danes, the ripple effects transformed how fans and filmmakers view on-set dynamics. Suddenly, what had been whispered anecdotes and grainy behind the scenes clips took on new life. Industry panels debated whether conflict is a creative necessity or a dangerous gamble. Film school lectures began opening with that story. Two artists collide. Spoiler alert, magic happens. In retrospectives, critics now point to moments in Romeo × Juliet where the tension beneath the surface gives scenes an unpredictable spark. What audiences once read as youthful passion, they now interpret as genuine friction channeled into performance. Contrast this modern perspective with the film's original release. Back then, promotions revolved around Leonardo's rising star power and Claire's reputation as a method prodigy. Interviews focused on plot, costumes, soundtrack, rarely delving into human dynamics. Fans were hungry for cinematic spectacle, not insider drama. Yet, the authenticity born from their struggle enhanced the movie's emotional core in ways traditional preparation never could. It illustrates a larger truth: collaboration isn't just about agreement. Sometimes, it's about reconciling opposing visions to create something neither could achieve alone. As the years passed, both DiCaprio and Danes grew in stature. Leo became a box office colossus, winning awards, founding a production company, championing environmental causes. Claire earned Emmy and Golden Globe victories, helming series that explored familial trauma and mental health with rare depth. Their career paths rarely crossed, yet each carried an invisible thread from that early feud. Leo would credit Claire's precision when discussing his later willingness to immerse himself in intense character research. Danes would recount how Leo's instinctive truth-seeking taught her that spontaneity can unlock hidden corners of emotion. Their stories became evidence that creative tension, when managed with respect, fuels personal growth. Transitioning from personal legacies to broader impact, casting directors began reconsidering their approach to pairing talent. Instead of seeking perfect compatibility, some started casting deliberately contrasting performers, betting that controlled friction might yield richer on-screen chemistry. Veteran producers debated whether rehearsals should include candid conflict resolution, exercises akin to therapeutic workshops. Scripts occasionally incorporated meta moments acknowledging creative clashes. The very notion of chemistry reads evolved to value a spark, sometimes best kindled by opposing artistic temperaments. Meanwhile, fans deepened their understanding of performance as alchemy. Social media accounts dedicated to dissecting tension takes emerged. Creators uploaded side-by-side comparisons of rehearsal footage and final cuts to highlight subtle shifts in mood. Video essays explored how a single improvisation could pivot a scene's emotional landscape. For many aspiring actors, Leo and Claire's example became a case study in balancing vulnerability with discipline. It wasn't about forcing conflict for drama's sake, but channeling inevitable disagreements into a shared creative purpose. Back on our original set, crew members still joke that they produced a hit argument that day under the ivy. The makeup artist remembers wiping sweat from Claire's brow after that heated garden scene. The boom operator recalls the hush that fell when Leo delivered that last unscripted line, the one that sent everyone scrambling. Those memories underscore a paradox. While tension threatened production schedules, it also yielded moments of unfiltered truth no amount of rehearsal could manufacture. Today, DiCaprio cites that moment when discussing authenticity in acting, advising young performers to embrace rather than resist creative discomfort. Of course, not every clash leads to cinematic gold. Many productions crumble under unbridled egos, but the DiCaprio, Dane's feud demonstrates a blueprint for transformation: open dialogue, mutual respect, willingness to apologize and listen. It shows how conflict can be harnessed, not as a weapon, but as a crucible that forges something stronger. Their story invites viewers and artists alike to reconsider conventional collaboration models, acknowledging that true artistry often emerges at the intersection of divergent impulses. In the aftermath of Leo's revelation, several other high-profile co-star feuds resurfaced under new scrutiny. Journalists dug into archived interviews between other pairings, some amicable, some notoriously hostile, to reassess how off-screen dynamics shaped on-screen chemistry. By reframing conflict as part of the creative process, these analyses shifted public perception. Audiences started celebrating candid discussions of tension, rather than condemning them, recognizing that disagreements can be the hidden engine behind beloved performances. As we look back on a career that spans Titanic's icy waters, The Revenant's brutal wilderness, and countless unforgettable roles, it's remarkable to trace a thread back to that initial clash with Claire Danes, a story that began as an uneasy detour in a young actor's journey, became a lodestar for how artists navigate collaboration. Leonardo DiCaprio's decision to finally reveal his true feelings about that co-star transcends simple gossip. It invites us into a deeper conversation about art, conflict, and the human heart. In our next section, we'll explore how this revelation has shaped both actors' legacies, affected their subsequent choices, and influenced the wider culture of filmmaking. We'll hear from directors who have witnessed friction firsthand, examine recent productions that deliberately harness tension, and consider whether this candid approach to creativity might define the future of collaborative art. Since Leonardo's revelation, both he and Claire have reemerged with new layers of introspection. Interviews now treat their feud as a formative experience rather than mere gossip. DiCaprio frames it as a truth-telling moment that reshaped his view on collaboration. Claire, in recent podcasts, talks about how trusting a partner sometimes demands confronting discomfort. Their shared legacy now embraces conflict as a powerful creative catalyst. Claire has grown reflective, noting that the feud forced her to balance precision with spontaneity. In her memoir, she credits Leo's improvisational boldness with teaching her to loosen rigid control and embrace emotional risk. She recalls that uneasy clash and now sees the tension as crucial to her artistic maturation. Their public rapport has warmed as they acknowledge remarkable growth born from those early challenges. DiCaprio, speaking in a roundtable, describes that conflict as a lesson in leadership. He admits he was impulsive and unprepared for the discipline Claire demanded. Yet he credits that friction with sharpening his focus. He explains how that confrontation taught him to listen more carefully and channel raw emotion. Today, he encourages emerging artists to welcome honest friction, rather than avoid it at all costs. Several directors who witnessed the original shoot have since affirmed the positive impact of that creative clash. One describes how the unrest injected genuine unpredictability, boosting authenticity in pivotal scenes. Another compares it to a workshop, where opposing energies fuel innovation. Both recommend open communication and conflict resolution to harness tension. Controlled friction can yield richer performances, often challenging norms of flawless coordination on set. Calling this story a game changer, casting professionals now reshape how they pair talent. Instead of solely seeking harmony, some look for complementary contrasts. Knowing controlled tension can generate magnetic chemistry. One casting director mentions auditioning actors with divergent approaches, then guiding them through disagreement sessions. Inspired by DiCaprio and Danes, this method aims to spark creativity and ensure on-screen relationships pulse with authentic, unpredictable energy. Film schools have embraced this narrative as a case study in creative collaboration. Professors assign scenes from Romeo + Juliet and ask students to recreate moments, first in harmony, then introducing planned conflict to observe shifts in performance. Workshops focus on open dialogue and structured disagreement. Educators report that actors who experience controlled tension develop deeper ensemble skills and find emotional layers in their craft. Recent productions have tried this approach in a high-profile streaming drama. The director paired two stars known for contrasting methods and set aside a week for choral sessions. Reports indicate the resulting tension translated into electric chemistry, so potent that audience engagement soared. Another indie film credited a pre-shoot workshop with unlocking performances that critics hailed as raw and authentic, proving this model's real-world impact. Producers, once wary of discord, have begun incorporating conflict resolution coaches into pre-production. One executive explains that guided workshops help stars voice grievances early, preventing resentments from derailing schedules. Another studio head credits this method with reducing reshoots, since performances reach their peak during initial filming rather than after pickups. By reframing friction as productive, producers aim to streamline workflows and foster deeper on-screen realism. Fan communities have embraced analysis of creative tension, launching podcasts that revisit scenes with commentary on off-screen dynamics. Social media discussions highlight micro-expressions, paused glances, and tonal shifts as evidence of friction. Viewers dissect leaked rehearsals, comparing them to final edits, and debating how conflict enhances storytelling. This culture has turned cinephiles into amateur set doctors, diagnosing tension and praising directors who channel it effectively. The concept of productive conflict has spread beyond film. Theater directors host sessions where actors spar with opposing interpretations before merging approaches into cohesive performances. In music, band rehearsals include intentional creative disagreements to spark arrangements. Art installations invite contrasting perspectives in planning. Across disciplines, artists credit these friction-driven experiments with uncovering uncharted expressive territory. It's a testament to conflict's power when harnessed with intention. The lasting lesson is that friction need not be feared. With clear communication, mutual respect, and mediation, tension can be transformed into a force for inspiration. Artists who embrace this model report breakthroughs in authenticity and depth. DiCaprio and Danes exemplify how confronting discomfort instead of avoiding it can accelerate growth. Their legacy encourages collaborators to view conflict not failure, an invitation to rise higher. As we approach the final chapter, consider how this paradigm might influence your creative endeavors. Whether in film, theater, music, or beyond, embracing friction could be key to unlocking potential. In the closing segment, we will examine how DiCaprio and Danes applied these lessons in subsequent projects, revealing the enduring power of collaboration born from conflict and further charting the trajectory of their evolving artistry. After that final chapter of revelation, both Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes stepped into new chapters of their careers with fresh perspectives forged by conflict. DiCaprio carried the lessons into the jungle of The Revenant, where he and director Alejandro Gonza Les Ritu embraced raw emotion under punishing conditions. During those brutal shoots in Sub-Zero Wilderness, Leo credits a renewed emphasis on communication with his co-stars, sharing improvised ideas one moment, then sitting down afterwards to ensure everyone understood the agreed-upon arc. The same spirit guided his work on The Wolf of Wall Street, where he and Martin Scorsese experimented with tension-filled takes. They purposely broke scene rhythm to see which takes sparked genuine reactions, then debriefed immediately. This two-step process of friction and reflection has become a staple in Leo's approach. Provoke authentic responses, then align around a cohesive vision. Meanwhile, Claire Danes applied the creative conflict blueprint to her television milestones. On Homeland, she learned to trust co-star Damian Lewis's instincts, even when his interpretation veered from her script notes. She would perform a scene her way, then let Damian riff, observing how his spontaneous choices could illuminate new emotional depths. After the take, they'd retreat to a quiet monitor room and compare versions, teasing out bits they'd stitch together for maximum impact. In interviews, Claire explains how these post-take conversations, born of that first feud, taught her that sometimes the best performance emerges only after clashing ideas hit a middle ground. It's a method that modern stars now study in acting workshops, referenced alongside DiCaprio's wilderness workshops and Danes's TV masterclasses. Their influence extended behind the camera, inspiring directors to lean into structured discord. In a recent high-budget streaming thriller, the director staged creative sparring sessions during rehearsals, encouraging opposing viewpoints on character motivations. The cast admitted these sessions occasionally became heated, but the friction yielded scenes alive with unpredictability. One actor described feeling electric vulnerability in multiple takes as disagreements forced them to tap into genuine anger or hurt. Afterwards, they would gather for guided mediation, balancing the tension with empathy. This new model echoes the DiCaprio Danes blueprint, conflict followed by conversation. Files from that production show fewer reshoots and tighter editing, credited to the clarity achieved during those early clashes. Producers have also adopted conflict-driven casting for commercial campaigns. In a recent action franchise, the casting director paired a classically trained veteran with an improv comedian. Two extremes on the performance spectrum. They spent weeks in improvisational boot camps, deliberately arguing over scene beats to spark unexpected chemistry. The viral trailer that launched the film showed a blend of raw spontaneity and measured technique, generating record-breaking pre-release buzz. Industry insiders report that early test screenings praised the pair's electric tension, a direct echo of what Leo and Claire first unleashed together. Based on that feedback, studios are now investing in conflict resolution coaches alongside intimacy directors and dialect coaches, signaling a paradigm shift in how on-set collaboration is cultivated. Far more than a Hollywood anecdote, the legacy of that initial conflict resonates as a universal creative lesson. From theater directors who pit actors against each other in early workshops, to musicians who intentionally play off dissonance in rehearsals, the concept of productive friction has become a rallying cry. Art schools host panels on the alchemy of argument, using the DiCaprio, Danes saga as a foundational case study. Entrepreneurs bring the model into boardrooms, facilitating structured disagreements to innovate new products. Even community theater tropes organize tension labs, where performers play conflicting desires to reveal untapped emotional layers. In every discipline, practitioners testify that harnessed conflict unleashes a level of authenticity and passion that harmony alone rarely achieves. As stories go, this one started as a behind.